St. John's Gospel, chapter 11. Jesus restores Lazarus to life, verses 1 to 44. Now it happened that a man called Lazarus became ill. He lived in Bethany, the village of Martha and her sister Mary. This was the same Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was ill. Then the sisters sent a message to him, Lord, please help us. Your dear friend is sick. When he heard this, he said, This isn't a fatal illness, but one through which God will reveal his glory, so that through it the Son of God may be exalted. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed put 2 more days. He then said to his disciples, Come on, let's return to Judea. They replied, Master, are you sure you want to return? The Jews there were only recently trying to stone you. There are 12 hours in the day, aren't there? Said Jesus. If anyone walks in daylight, he doesn't stumble, because he sees the light of the world. But if anyone walks at night, he stumbles, because he doesn't have any light. He said all this, and afterwards told them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, so I'm going to wake him up. Master, said his disciples, if he's just having a nap, what's the problem? But Jesus had spoken about his death. His disciples, however, thought he was talking about sleep. Jesus then told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. I'm glad for your sakes that I wasn't there, so that you may have faith. But let's go to him. Then Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to the others, Let's go as well, so that we may die with him. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been entombed 4 days earlier. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away. Many of the Jews had travelled to Martha and Mary to offer their condolences for their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was on his way, she went out to meet him, while Mary remained at home. Martha then said, Master, if you'd only been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask of him. Jesus says to her, Your brother will be raised up. I know, says Martha, that he'll be raised in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even though they should die, will live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Master, she says to him. I truly believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one destined to come into the world. When she said this, she went back and spoke privately to her sister and said, The teacher's here and is asking for you. When she heard this, Mary got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not arrived at the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been in the house with Mary offering their condolences saw that she had got up quickly and gone out, they followed her, assuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there. So when Mary came to the spot where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at her feet, saying, Master, if only you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. When Jesus saw her weeping along with the Jews who accompanied her, he snorted in indignation, deeply distressed. He said, "Where have you placed him?" They replied, "Master, come and see." Jesus broke down in tears. The Jews were saying, "See how much he loved him." But some of them said, "Couldn't the man who opened the eyes of the blind have done something to prevent Lazarus from dying?" Then Jesus, again seething with rage, came to the tomb. It was in fact a cave, and there was a stone lying across it. "Take away the stone," says Jesus. "Master," replies Martha, "the body will stink. He's been in the grave 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Didn't I tell you that if you'd believed, you'd see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that it was you who sent me." After saying this, he let out a mighty cry, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his feet and hands bandaged, and his face wrapped in cloth. Jesus says to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Many of those Jews who had come to Mary and who had seen what he had done believed in him. Plotting against Jesus, verses 45 to 57. However, others went off to the Pharisees and told them all that Jesus had been up to. As a result, the chief priests and Pharisees convened a council and began asking, "What are we going to do? For this man is performing many miraculous signs. If we leave him to his own devices, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and destroy our temple and nation." Then one of them, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, said, "How stupid you are! You know nothing. Don't you realize that it's far better that one man should die for the people than that the whole nation should perish?" He did not say this of his own volition, but as high priest for that year, he predicted that Jesus would die for the nation, and not only for the nation, but in order that the scattered children of God might be gathered together and made one. So from that day they plotted to kill Jesus. For this reason, he no longer went about openly among the Jews, but took himself off to a region near the desert, to Ephraim, and remained there with his disciples. Now as the Passover approached, many Jews went up from the country to Jerusalem in order to purify themselves before the Passover. They kept a lookout for Jesus too, but as they stood around in the temple, were saying among themselves, "What do you think? Surely he's not going to come to the festival, is he?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees gave strict instructions that anyone who knew his whereabouts should report it to them so that they might arrest him. That's my reading of St. John's Gospel, chapter 11, from my translation from the Greek. It's published by Matador. You can get it on Amazon or on Kindle. All profits are going to Christian charity.